The next painting that we're going to do for flowers is a single rose. And I picked one that was mostly white with just a little bit of color on it, so we could clearly see how the value ranges help us see the individual petals. And so when we go to do our drawing, what we want to look for is the edges of all of those petals. So I'm looking for where these edges are. So if you're going to do a tracing, that's what you want to trace, is the edge of each of those petals. And as they come down in here into the semi-shadow area, it's a little harder in a way to see them. But that's what you want to find, is the edge of the petals. That's going to be the important thing. That's what we're going to show that this isn't just a round flower with some colors in it. We're going to make it so that it really looks like a rose. So then my next thing that I have to decide once I've got that drawing done, so I have my contour drawing of the rose on my page. I did this is a single sheet of paper, and because I didn't want to use a light box is the other way I can do it, I'm actually able to put my drawing and my photograph up on a window with light coming through it, and the watercolor paper is actually translucent enough that you can see through to draw those. So if you're using a single sheet of paper, that's one way to work without having an actual light box. If you're working on a block, which I frequently do, because we leave those pages on the block because they're pre-stretched on there, you'll have to use transfer paper to transfer your final drawing onto the block. So now drawing is done. I've got it transferred onto here. I've also noted where there's some light patches on here. Now the next thing, this tends to be pretty confusing. There's a bunch of lines on here, what is what. So the next decision I have to make is, what am I going to paint on here first to help me distinguish one petal from another? We're going to do these petals basically one at a time, so that we can find the hard edges between them and we can get the delicate changes of color on them. But it's easy for me to get very lost in here. So I have to decide, am I going to paint the pink on these edges, which help tell me where those petals are first, or am I going to come in and paint this yellow gray that comes between those petals to show where the petals are going to be? And after a lot of thought, and I'm still somewhat, there is no right answer. You can do either one first. But I think I'm going to do the yellow gray first. And I'm going to start with just a yellow. This is the other thing, that it actually shifts. It's not the same yellow throughout here. If I put a gray card on here and start looking at these shadow areas to see how dark they are, I can also see against this neutral gray that this is a yellow gray in here. But as I move out into here, it's more of a neutral gray, almost leaning toward the green side. And up in here, it's lighter, it's not as dark, and it really leans toward the yellow-gray side. So there is a little shift in color as it runs down through here. You're getting bounce light from the green leaves up into this part of it. This is more the natural color of the flower showing through. So now we are going to mix, and what yellow do I want to use here? Do I want to do the New Gamboge? New Gamboge leans a little on the warm side. And I've made myself a little trial here of paper. I took a piece of watercolor paper and I punched holes in it so that I can then look and see what's going to happen. So if I have just yellow, and I try that against this, is that going to be about right? And it's actually going to need to go slightly darker than that, isn't it? Which I was surprised. I didn't think it was going to be. And that New Gamboge is going to work nicely as a first. It could have just a wee touch of, do Do I want to put a little purple into it? Let's try just, I have this purple gray that I had mixed up for another project. Let's just add a little bit of that into it. This paper that I'm using is accepting paint different than my regular paper. That's actually going to be pretty close. I'll try it over here on the side too. Yeah, that's going to be fairly close. Don't need a big pile of it, but maybe a little bit more than what I've got here. Let's new gamboge and a touch of purple. Not very much, just a touch, a little tiny bit more than that. Okay. And now this gray here, maybe this is where my purple has to get emptied out of here. Okay, let's just shift it the other way. This has got the purple in here. Let's just add new gamboge into it until it shifts a little more neutral. This paper, does it work better on the other side? My students have been asking me, does your paper, actually this funny scrap of paper, it's something that I don't think I've been using much, but that's actually pretty close. Okay, so those are my two colors that I'm going to work with. And now, starting in here, this is yellow, more yellow at the center. So I want to find the edge of these first petals. And all of that is neutralized. None of it is white in there, so this can paint all the way through here. Find the edge of that petal, and then it turns a little more gray as it comes down into here, so I can add a little more of the grayish looking one. And as it comes out, I'm just wondering whether it needs a little bit of green added into it. Yes, it does. And now I need to make sure that I don't lose. This is the important area. That's that petal there. This is actually dark in here. It's going to have some pink in on it. This petal right here. Okay. And that's dark there. And then it's light at the bottom of this one petal, so I need to be careful not to lose that. And then it's a little darker there. Going to lighten up as it comes down to the bottom of that. I can come back in later and do the really darker places. Oh, let's get this. I need to just work this a little tiny bit more. Okay. And I wasn't paying attention, and I've lost that white that's down there. This is white on the bottom of that one. That's the edge of that petal, and it's white up on that top edge. Okay. That's where that shadow runs across through there. Oh, and it wraps down this way just a little bit more than I had it marked. Okay. It's dark underneath of here. And we'll just let that be a little smaller area. And then over in here, this is turning a little bit more of a green-gray. I have a petal there. So we're just doing this loose to start with, not getting all of the details. Okay, now that's going to stop there. This underneath it here is a little more of a green-gray. And now let's find, that's that. There's a darker space right in here. And it wraps up and over that petal. And now getting up into here, this is yellow. And then I need to grade it out of here, clean my brush a little bit, soften that just a little bit. Okay. Back up in here. And I can come in and I can work these more, make them darker, grade on them a bit more. But I'm wanting to find where the light and dark places are so that we can see that. And also where one petal starts and another one stops. That's going to come out graded there. Up in here, this is yellow, and yellow across that petal there. And then let's get this yellow all back in behind this petal here. And then it turns slightly green. So I can go ahead and put a little of that green in there. And about there. Soften the edge of this. It's going to turn pink on that outside edge. This is a little darker right back in this corner. In some ways this is almost like paint by number as you work your way around and through this. There's one other place of yellow here that we need, and that's in between these petals right here. And that feels like it needs a little bit of that green added into it. Okay. I think we stop at this point. Yeah, we can do a little tiny bit over here. I'll pull those apart. There's a little bit right in here that's just a tiny, very light yellow. And then everything else is going to be darker petals to hold that apart. Okay, I think we're going to stop at this point. I just want to bring that all the way across there because the bottom of that petal really stands out. I do believe I'm going to stop at this point. Stop at this point because now I have a distinguishing thing of what's going on here. It's going to get quite a bit of it's going to go darker. We're going to break some of those petals apart, but at least now I know where my lightest places are and where my darks are going to be working in. So stop at this point.